Something I do every single month is share my profit and loss statement. I'm an open book. I want people to understand how much it costs to run a business. It's kind of documenting my process. I'll break down how much profit comes from these sales, etc. So, the first thing we're going to do is hop onto my computer. I'll take you into Inventory Lab and we'll go through the nuts and bolts. It's kind of for just proof that these are my numbers. We'll hit on some of the important talking points, and then I'll exit from there and really break down all of my expenses, my net profit margin, things of that nature. So here we are in Inventory Lab, October of 2022. Okay. So top right corner, this is where you can see the sales for the month, 43,747 and 76 cents. Under that is refunds, and there's reimbursements, shipping credits, things of that nature, which makes that number dwindle down to 42,000 and change. I always like to stop at the next item under expenses, cost of goods sold. And if you look to the far right, I'm highlighting it, 24,649 and 34 cents. And I always like to take a moment to explain to people what exactly that is. That's not how much I spent on goods in the month of October. That is how much I spent on the goods that sold in October. So whether I bought them 5 years ago, a year ago, a month ago, a week ago, all that matters is when it sells, then that's the tally of how much I spent on those goods that did indeed sell. Okay. So the reason I like to point that out is that in October, if I said, you know what, I'm taking my business to the moon, I'm spending $100,000 on inventory in October. Well, that's not necessarily reflected here. So my bank account might show, wow, I owe a lot of money right now until that stuff sells. But if you just looked at the profit and loss, you wouldn't know that whole picture. So just know profit and loss is great on a small scale, but a balance sheet is kind of really what you want to look at for the whole picture of your business. Okay. And also, I just wanted to share again what the cost of goods sold is. Okay. Then Amazon selling fees, those always equate to about 30%. I say if you want to do quick math, worst case scenario, you can assume that Amazon's going to take a third. I also like to always mention people kind of gasp at that number, especially if you're new. Think about what Amazon is. It is $1 trillion brand. And notice how I don't just say company, it's one of the most recognizable brands in the world. It provides you with prime shipping. What business could you start for a couple $100s and have access to tens of millions of daily active users, right? So I don't really care what Amazon takes. I factor that into all my decision making. And unless they were to like quadruple or get outrageous, I'm in it, right? Regardless of what they take, it's well deserved. They handle the shipping, the logistics. I mean, literally, we're riding their coattails. It's everything. So I'm totally cool with that. Then there's some storage fee stuff. Not a whole lot to worry about there. That really just matters if you have things that aren't selling and they're taking up space. Amazon will eventually charge you in a little bit. I will say I need to kind of tighten this up because it looks like I have about $120, excuse me, $81 worth of storage fees. There it is, 30-day storage fees. And then long-term storage fees, 15 cents. So yeah, I'm right around $82. I should really eliminate that and look into those products. That's on me. Something I'm going to definitely do now. Other expenses, I'm going to break down with you after we go through this, but just know I'm going to go over all of my subscriptions, all of my tools. Basically, everything is factored in here, and that leaves us at the bottom, in the bottom left, a net profit of $5,193.60. Okay. So I do want to mention there's only a few things I forgot to add to that, but I made a note. I know I was going to go over expenses. So that number really is actually $4,775. Okay. And the 4,775, that's truly after every single expense. Okay. And so if you do the math on that, on the amount of sales I did at the 43,000 and change, that's 11% net profit. Again, after everything. Only thing it's excluding is taxes, right? Now, I do want to mention something that's really important. And I kind of missed out on this in a couple of videos, but the cashback opportunities that come with online arbitrage are substantial, and I do factor them into my decision-making processes. So even if my percent margin is down, sometimes I factor that in because I know I'm getting 10%, 20% cash back on certain purchases, right? And so anyway, I use a cashback credit card that's 2% cashback on absolutely everything. Okay. And then also I use sites like Rakuten and Rebates Me and Top Cashback, where you basically get a percentage of the purchase back to you. And there's really all you have to do is click a button. So it's a no-brainer if you're doing online arbitrage. And so let's just say that I get 4% cash back on the cashback extensions, which by the way, I actually think it's higher. It's just hard to pinpoint it because there's a lot of lag time. So 2% on the credit card, 4% on those sites, 6%. I spent $27,000 on goods in October. Now, again, what I spent in October is 27,000. That's different from cost of goods that's sold in October, okay? Even though the numbers are close, they're different. So 6% of 27,000 is $1,620. So if I add that to my net profit of 4,775, now my real profit is $6,395, which is closer to a 15% net profit margin after all my expenses. And by the way, the cashback money and rewards, everything that I understand, that's not taxable income. That's seen as like a discount or a sale, very different than income. So that part's not even taxable, which is great. Okay. So all in all, I basically made 6,400 bucks on $43,000 in sales for October when you break it down. Now, what I want to get into is breaking down my expenses with you guys. So this way you have a clear-cut understanding of what it takes to run an Amazon business of my current size. All right. So a couple fixed expenses that I have that are non-tools or subscriptions: $60 a month in insurance and $400 in interest on a pretty substantial Amazon loan that I was offered and I took for a variety of reasons. I've made videos on that. But anyway, I'm factoring that into the monthly expenses. So that's $460 right there. Then fixed expenses on tools. I use SellerAmp, $20 a month. I think it's like 19 or 16. I'm just calling it 20. Keepa, same thing, 20. Inventory Lab, 69. My REPRICER, Profit Protector Pro, is $65. And my professional Amazon seller account is $40. That totals $214 a month. Okay. So right now we're at $674. Now, I have two new expenses I want to mention. First off, I started using a prep center, not on a 100% basis, but just starting to use them. And I'm going to continue to do more and more and more. But I really didn't want to just give them the kitchen sink like overnight, right? So I spent $288 on prep. Now, keep in mind, this isn't reflected in profit or anything, but I actually would have paid a lot more in sales tax and had to prep those items myself, since that these items were going to an area where they didn't have tax on these products. Okay. So even though it's an expense, it's technically kind of a saving and a time saver, but it's still an expense on paper. Also, something I don't know if I'm going to keep, but I joined a Amazon lawyer who does a $89 a month retainer to basically constantly be someone you can lean on. As I've continued to grow the business, it's nice to know he was in my corner, but the real reason I did it, there was a brand that gave me a cease and desist, and I knew I was going to go ahead and try to sell through them before any further headaches came, and I wanted to have him in my back pocket. Nice guy. I know a lot of sellers use him that are doing this at scale, and I don't necessarily think it's not worth it. I don't know if I'm going to keep it. I have to think about it, but that was an expense for the month that I'm factoring in. Supplies, poly bags, boxes, stuff like that, I have as $41. So all in, fixed, non-fixed, variable in the supplies, my new purchases, my total expenses for the month were $1,092. Now, again, that is factored into all the other numbers we've already talked about. So that means that last month, that's what it took me to run my business. Now, supplies are variable, but pretty much everything else, and maybe prep center is variable. For the most part, the majority of that, 3/4 of it, let's call it, are going to be non-negotiable fixed expenses at this current point in my journey. Now, if you're new, naturally, you don't need to be paying interest for a loan unless you happen to take one. I don't know that you need all of the tools I have, but I don't use so many, right? And I think that they're all pretty essential. then obviously you don't need the lawyer or a prep center off the bat either. You are going to need supplies. So just to give you a realistic idea of what it takes to run a business of this size. And as far as just some general things I'll share with you, I mentioned this last video, but the power of cashback rewards, as I mentioned, is really substantial and a huge part of online arbitrage, to the point that I've even started keeping track of the products I come across that are nowhere near profitable, but maybe near break even, in case I ever just want to spend capital, or once or twice a year a great sale happens and I can go back to them, just because sometimes you can get 20%, 30% cash back. And then it's just like, even if I break even on the sale of the item, I'm making money on that, right? So that's a huge part of online arbitrage. Another thing I want to mention, a lot of sellers, you'll see they're scaling very, very quickly. The last 6, 7 months, I've right around $45,000, between 40 and 50K basically. Now with time, I've been doing online arbitrage the last 7 months, retail arbitrage about 2 years before that. So this is still a learning curve to me. But something that never gets talked about, and I'm going to make videos on this, is that it's great to scale fast, but just because you're profiting a lot when you scale fast on a monthly profit and loss statement does not mean your bank account reflects that. In fact, I'd be willing to die on the hill that most people that are scaling too fast are cash poor and inventory rich. And I'm not knocking that, but I think it needs to be talked about more. A lot of people want to replace their jobs. A lot of people think that everyone with these huge sales numbers are just like rolling in it, and it's not the case. A lot of people are spending quicker than what they're actually getting paid out and getting their money back, and they're just reinvesting it. So basically, they're increasing their net worth, but their bank account isn't growing. I'm not hating on that. But for me right now, I'm kind of evaluating if and why I want to do that. I really like my schedule. I put in probably 8 to 12 hours of deep sourcing hard work each week, couple hours of packing. I have another small business outside of this that I'm really trying to grow as well. So for me to make close to $6,400 profit, 15, 20 hours a week, while getting to make videos, while getting to work on my other business, I don't know if it's worth constantly scaling and putting all my eggs in the Amazon basket to scale, because the quicker you scale, if you scale too fast, you again, like, you don't realize that cash flow. So for me, and going into 2023, we'll talk about more goals, but really, like, if I'm spending $27,000 a month now, maybe then I'll go to 30, and maybe by the end of the year 35. But I don't have any ambitions right now, at least, to go from now to like spend 50 to 100K a month, because I know how much cash and capital gets tied up, and how capital intensive online arbitrage can be. And so for me personally, I like the thought of cash flowing a little more consistently and spending time to do other things. And I just wanted to share that, because I think so many people get caught up in scale, scale, scale. And like, more isn't always better, right? Everyone's different. Or maybe, you want to do half Amazon and half another business in your life, or whatever the case may be, right? And it's like, there's things that are great for cash flow, and there's things that aren't. And Amazon's not. It's not for better or worse. But if you need cash flow, maybe you have to have an honest conversation with yourself. And anyway, I'm starting to digress, but the bottom line is that's really become clear to me, and no one talks about it. I promise you, your favorite Amazon sellers that are scaling very fast are probably cash poor and inventory rich. It's not a knock, it's not a dig, but you can't buy a rental property being cash poor, right? You can't say, "Oh, unless you decide to sell through all of your inventory and stop spending for a couple months." That's an option too. So you really just got to find what works for you, and just know that there's not a one size fits all. And I'm trying to figure out what size I currently want to grow to, but whatever it is, it's going to be methodical instead of just doing it for the sake of it. So appreciate you guys being here. I'm always an open book about the numbers. I want you to know what really goes on. I'm Jonathan. Duke does Amazon. Questions, comments, topics, let me know, and have a great day. I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.